I want to turn this collection of parts into a set of fully functioning, reliable road bike wheels. There is, however, one fairly big problem, and that is the fact I don't actually know what I'm doing. So this is going to be the start of a mini-series where we can learn as we build until we get the job done. Now this is episode 1, so I'm going to be learning and speaking to the man, the myth, the legend that is Calvin Jones from Park Tools to not only learn some of the basics, but also understand how to calculate what spoke length I need. Right, Calvin, I am on a mission to learn how to build a set of wheels. There is one big problem, and that is that I don't know what the hell I need to do. So, this is where you come in, because I need you to help me and everyone at home try to understand how to build a wheel and why we're doing certain jobs, what they do.
We don't have a problem here. We have an opportunity. This is a great opportunity to do some learning and have a good time. So, it's like thinking about it, like you're gonna take that vacation, it's thinking about all this thing that could be and this and that. Is it gonna be blue spoke nipples? Are you gonna use white spokes? At some point we're gonna make decisions, right? And narrow down. And you're gonna learn how to build a wheel. So this is gonna be great. So give me a story. Who is this for? What are these wheels, where are they gonna end up?
Okay, so I'm building a set of wheels to go on Ollie's retro bike, okay? So, the reason I've chosen some parts already, I've already got the wheel rims. These are Mavic Open Pros, like what I would say is a traditional wheel. 32 spokes, alloy rim. I've got no hubs yet, although we're gonna go with an old school Campagnolo hub. And then the main concern I have, or opportunity, should I say, is how on earth do you know what spokes to use and how long they need to be? It's all so confusing.
So we have a hoop. It is a circle. It's just simply a circle. We need to connect the dots. You're gonna have 32 dots here. Your hub is gonna have 32 dots here. So point A to point B. So the shortest distance is what we call, of course, radial. And that's gonna be here to here, straight out. Now, old school, we can get away with a lot more. A radial is kind of fun looking. It's not that traditional. For him, I think that bike, let's stick with the 3-cross, but if you wanted radial, we can go straight from the hub, straight to the rim, the shortest spoke. Now that's the simplest to figure out. Once you start crossing spokes, it's called a lacing pattern, right? So you're gonna go from the hub, you're gonna cross once or twice or 3 times. The angle keeps changing. It gets further and further away. And that is another good discussion between mechanics on what's the best cross pattern, right? So we would each have to have a pint, an ocean across to have the correct discussion here.
For me, I think, traditional wheel build, it's gonna have the spokes crossed over. What I think everyone would associate if they said, what does a wheel look like? They're gonna have lots of spokes and then boom, crossed over.
Right, so the 3-cross pattern. So anyway, there's a bunch of math involved. It is worth it if you're going to keep doing this to understand and take the concepts rather than just dump the numbers in a computer and spit out the numbers and it's going to tell you, oh, this is exactly right. If you have a sense of what's right, it's going to be reasonable, right? So if you know where the numbers came from, you're less likely to make a mistake. So your very first time you're doing this, one of the things you want to add the components, right? Because we talked about different tools. We'll talk about those later. The toys are fantastic for wheel building. Lots and lots of toys. But the main thing you're going to need is some time and patience. Patience to work it through. So let's talk about length and the math. So it's worth it to go ahead and measure, get yourself a caliper. We're going to measure the hub from hole to hole straight across. Those little holes define a pattern. So we want to know the diameter of that pattern. The bigger the flange, you can imagine, the shorter the spoke. All right? The smaller, the longer the spoke. Does that help the ride? No, it doesn't help. A low flange hub and a high flange, that used to be one of the great arguments. Oh, a high flange hub is stiffer. Oh, it's gonna be shorter spoke, it's gonna be stiffer. Really good old school BS. Just excellent, as we say it.
So fun. I love that you said
Yeah, and the point is to get the right spoke length. So we begin with that diameter. We need to plug that into the page that we're working with. There's several different spoke length calculators online. Our videos recommend some. You can plug them in. It's all pretty much the same equation. They're going to get you really, really close. And yes, it is good enough, right? This is not going to be the James Webb satellite for the old school people, right? The Hubble telescope. No. We got to get within close to the spoke length, but it doesn't have to be to the 100th of a millimeter. That's where we're going to begin. The other aspects is the width to the center. Really wide hubs triangulate more. This is just trigonometry, right? You thought you left that in school. No, it's come back to haunt you. So the middle of the rim, if I get wider and wider, it's longer and longer. Now, the front one is classic. It's going to be the same left and right. But on the rear hub, we have what's called dish. Here, we want to center to the middle of the frame, not to the middle of these flanges. Right? We want the middle of the frame. So the drive side here is going to be shorter than the non-drive. That's going to be kind of fun when we get to tension as well, when you get down to that aspect.
Yeah, I think that's going to make it slightly confusing, but I think there's some really key principles, aren't they? That spoke length on the front is the same left to right. On the rear, they're shorter on the drive side, longer on the non-drive side. I think perhaps dishing is a subject we should save for later down the line.
Right, that's right. And this, another thing, because front, non-rotor wheels, right?
Yeah.
Ain't no rotor here. So this is your rotor. So we know the width, we know the flange to the middle. We can measure this distance here. That's all plugged in. Now we need more information. We need to think about our rim. So got my rim here, you got your rim. It's not the diameter where the tire sits. We don't care. We care where the spoke ends up, So if we take
the seat of where the spoke nipple would go inside the rim.
Right, that's right. There's a seat. What the head of the spoke here is going to sit inside the rim, but we actually want as much spoke as we can get. So, okay, for example, if I go all the way, the spoke is sticking out just a little bit. You know what? That's okay. It's not going to make a flat tire if we have a recessed eyelet, right? That spoke would have to stick up 5 or 6 millimeters to hit, all right? So we can be a little bit long, we can be right even with the head, a little bit short, but if we are short, for example, if we have, 1, 2, 3, 4 threads, you could build a wheel. We have threads sticking out here. It's not as good as engagement, and you've created a stress riser, leaving these spokes exposed. As you work the wheel and different stresses, you're possibly going to get a break right here. So we want enough thread to get the nut, the nipple, all the way on, okay? So there's a millimeter or so give here. That's great.
That makes perfect sense, and I think it means it's good to know that there is a little margin of error here, so it's not, we don't have to be precise within a millimeter, and I think it's good to highlight that if the spoke is too short, it's going to impact strength and longevity of the wheel.
When in doubt, round up, Alex. When in doubt, right? So it's 290.1 is the exact spoke I need. No, you go with the 290. 290.5 No, you can't buy a 290.5. You're buying a 291. Okay. Then it gets more fun because the marketplace, you may go out there and say, I need a 291. They don't make it in 291. 290 or 292, go the 292. Yeah, I'll try and go a little bit higher. So we can measure not the inside of the rim, from that head all the way across. And there's tools to do this, but if you have some spokes sitting around, you can use them as measuring sticks and determine the diameter, that rim effective diameter that you plug into those equations. So
this is the opposite reading of the measurement that you've taken from the hub. So we've got the seats of the hub, and then we're going to do the opposite for the external edge.
That's right. That's right. So we know our two circles. Then we look at the angle that it's going to leave. We know that if the 3x it's leaving at such a degree, it's all in the algorithms. You punch it all in, and then it's going to give you a number. It's going to give you a number.
So something that perhaps seems really confusing on the face of it is actually relatively simple, because like you say, once you've understood the basic principles, you know how to get the measurements right, and then you've got calculators to do the maths for you.
Get comfortable with it, then you're going to get your numbers, and then you're going to get your spokes. Now, what spokes do you think we're going to go with? What are we thinking here?
I mean, for starters, it's going to have what's called a J-bend on it, right? Where it's got the curve on the end, the opposite being a straight pull. So J-bend is going to be the one. But something I'm thinking about, and I want to hear your thoughts on, is the differences between spokes. Because there's so many different ones out there. There's straight gauge, double butted, round bladed, elliptical. Where do we start with some of this stuff?
Simple. So let's start. Our first one, simple for Ollie, and especially on a wheel like that. So what year is this bike, more or less?
Oh, 80s, maybe even before that.
Yeah. So it's a round spoke. Yeah, late 80s, we started to get in some blades, but the round for sure. A straight spoke is simple, is the least likely to twist up when you're building it. So it's the same dimension, it's 2 millimeters all the way, for example, 2 millimeters all the way. There are straight spokes that are 1.8 millimeters all the way. Don't do that. I wouldn't recommend those spokes. They should just fade away and go away. If you ever break a spoke and you're trying to replace it, it's going to be hard to find it. So this is a butted spoke. It's hard to see, but I can feel a little butt right at the end. It's thinner in the middle, thicker at the end. Why thicker at the end? Where are spokes more likely to break on any kind of quality spoke? Here or here, right? Not going to break in the middle. The stress is at the ends, right? So a good quality spoke, gosh, there's good spokes out there now, right? We used to talk about Trois Etoiles, right? There's 3-Star and Junior and Torrington, all these old weird names. But now the spokes have kind of settled out, but there's, Supreme's good, Pillar's good, DT, of course, is good. If you can get them still, Wheelsmith. So good quality steel. The J-bend is here, your spoke length is here. So, lots of good ones, but I would recommend stainless. They're going to stay, good and look good. And butted, the 1.8. Build a nice wheel. You can't even get thinner, 1.5, but when you build, the spokes will tend to twist up, and then they will ping, 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 ping. When you get your wheel done and you stress it out, you'll get that pinging, and it'll happen less on 1.8.
Okay, next. So we've discussed spokes. There's obviously one more piece to the puzzle to construct our wheel, obviously the spoke nipple.
Right.
So there's lots of options out there. We've got brass ones, aluminium ones, different colours. Now something I've experienced in the past have been when I've had wheels for quite a few years, the spoke nipples have started to corrode. That's because they're made from aluminium, is that right?
That's correct. So for new builders, this is one thing I'm not recommending. Let's get out our scale and let's measure 32 aluminium, and here's 32 brass. Oh, look at the weight we're saving. Don't do it, don't do that. Build with brass, build with brass. You are right about the corrosion. This is especially true on tubeless. It's gonna see some moisture from the sealant. It shouldn't in theory, but it's gonna happen. They're gonna corrode and it's a big pain in the neck. Now, for him, why would you want the aluminum? The main reason you would want this, they come in blue. Oh, how beautiful. Gold, pink, you can get all the colors in the softer metal. It is a softer metal. Another important thing about it that is not good is the coefficient of friction. The aluminum gouges as it turns, right? That aluminum gets in there and it's soft. Brass is chrome plated. This is not steel. It's brass. It's softer. It's a nicer thread. And because of the chrome, it tends to turn. And well, don't we want it sticky? Don't we want it to gouge? This is an important thing. You do not. You want the tension to come from your tightening to hold it tight. If you are gouging up here, you're going to feel in your hand when you're truing with the spoke wrench, oh, it feels tight. Well, it's not pulling up the spoke tight. It's a false sense. It's a very false tension feel just to go by hand turning. So
the same principle as when we've spoken in the past about applying torque onto a bolt. We need to have the threads lubricated and there needs to be a washer because otherwise we're going to be torquing the resistance in the system.
You're absolutely right. So when you tighten a bolt in the crank or your water bottle cage, blah, 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 there's flex in the system. So people say, okay, this one happens to be a 290. When I build my wheel tight, it is longer. It does become a little bit longer than 290, correct. But I take the wheel out and hand it to you. How long is it? 290. It doesn't deform. People say, oh, my spoke's stretched. Well, they flex, but they don't literally. If you stretch, you can actually stretch these spokes. If you stress them, you are within just a hair of them breaking, right? So the yield point, it's called the yield point, and the tensile point is the next thing. A tensile, snap, right? But you want that flex. It's the modulus of elasticity. Tighter, 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 snap. Well, it takes a lot to break this spoke. That's when we jumping ahead, but when you get there, the spoke doesn't determine the tension. You're gonna measure the tension here. People say, well, I got 1.8 millimeter spokes. How tight should they be? What determines it? The rim. The rim determines it. The spoke is stronger than the rim. All right, so that's when you get to building it and tightening it up, that's a concern. So that's when we start looking things up. So yeah, chrome for sure, starting out. We're gonna use the 1.8 butted and then your classic hub.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've discussed a lot of measurements and stuff so far, but in order to get some of these measurements right and start to construct this wheel, we're going to need some tools and pieces of equipment, aren't we?
Yeah.
So we're going to need tape measure, vernier calipers.
The right tape measure, it's not accurate enough. You're going to need calipers, that's handy, and a spoke ruler. This can...
I'm ready.
It does the same thing if you're careful. The idea is that it hooks, the hook's right at the zero. Our measurement is not from the center of the head, it's from that inside of the J. You lay it in there and you come across here and read. The nice thing about the Park tool, of course, oh, this is 11 7/8. Okay, who's selling 11 7/8? No one anymore. So use the metric side. Oh, okay, there's my millimeter number. That's just a double check. And when you get your spokes, of course, don't, look at the box, but also make sure when you stack them, they left a tall one. So make sure they're all the same size. So what are some other fun things, right? The truing stand. Oh, of course we want the best truing stand. We want dishing tools. This is a clamp to help keep the spoke from twisting. Lots of different spoke wrenches. Don't worry about that. The main thing you're going to want, again, time, patience, the correct spoke wrench, right? The caliper's good, the ruler's good, and then lace it and build your wheel, okay? A lot of this stuff saves time. Why does Park Tool make this stuff? It saves people time, right? If you're a home mechanic and this is your hobby and it takes you 2 hours to do one wheel, oh, wow, that was so good. This is so much fun. I spent 2 hours in my little cave and I'm so happy. This is my happy place. You're working for somebody in a shop and they're yelling, Alex, is that wheel done yet? You save them 5 minutes by using a fancy tool. What a good day, right? You're putting the work out. So for professionals, yes, that's why we make these tools. They save you time. That's absolutely great. But if you have lots of time to invest, you can work around it. So
okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I think as I go through the process, perhaps I'm going to learn how to use these tools and the reason that they exist. I think that's going to be a good thing as I go along. But I think really the most important thing for me is to take the time, once I've got the hubs, do some measurements. That's what I need to go away with and do. Now that I've got an understanding of the fundamentals, I think. That's really what I wanted to learn through this episode, is the fundamentals. Because for me, wheel building seems a very confusing subject. But once you start to get the basics and practice, I think it's like any, well, I'm hoping it's like any maintenance task. The more you practice, the better you get.
That's right. Jump in the water. It's fine. Jump on in, Alex. It's going to be good. So, and what the heck? They're all these wheels anyway.
Okay, so that is a lot of information to digest, but super helpful nonetheless. But what I need to do now is some measuring. And in order to do some measuring, well, I'm going to need some measuring equipment. So I've got my spoke length ruler, and I've also got a digital vernier caliper, which is going to help me measure some of the crucial information I need to get from my hubs. Now, there's information I need to get from the hubs, such as the flange diameters, the width of the flange hubs, and also the width of the axle body itself, as well as the number of spoke holes, the diameter of the spoke holes, and then the same kind of information for the rear hub as well. Plus, the other piece of information I need is the ERD, or effective rim diameter, which is the distance between the spoke holes on opposite sides of the internal edge of the wheel rim. Once I've got all this information, I can then use a number of different online calculators which you can choose from, plug all the information in, and that will spit out a spoke length, which is what I need to order to build these wheels. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is take some of the measurements of the hub, and luckily the website that I'm using, which is called the Pro Wheel Builder website, has a really good chart and image on there so you can see what bits you need to measure, plug the information in, and then it will build a picture up as you go. So let's do that now. The measurements I need to take are for the effective rim diameter and also a number of different measurements for both the front and rear hubs. What makes this a lot easier is that most online spoke length calculators will show you what parts of the hub you need to measure. The effective rim diameter for the majority of rims can be searched for online, but I want to know how to measure it. One way to do so is using two spokes with spoke nipples on the ends. You first need to measure the distance between the J-bend and the part of the spoke nipple where it seats on the wheel rim. Then place the spokes through opposing holes in the rim bed and using your vernier caliper measure the distance between the bend of the spokes. Add the spoke measurements together and then add the measurement of the middle and you end up with the ERD, in this case 605 millimeters. Having input all of the relevant measurements, the calculator tells me I need spokes that are 291 millimeters long for the front wheel, and on the rear I need 292 millimeters on the left and 289 millimeters on the right. As Calvin has explained, there is a bit of wiggle room here on these measurements, as you might find some spoke lengths are not available. Right, that is everything done and measured. I now know what spoke length I need, so the next thing to do is to head online, order the spokes that I need, and then we can pick this up in a few weeks. Now, if you have enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up and get involved in the comments section down below and let me know your thoughts on building your own set of wheels. Right, see you in a bit.